Why are young men so hopeless at dating? That's not my question. That's the title to an article published in Vox is February 12th, just a few days ago. Hi, welcome back to Far From Eden. Why? Why are young men so hopeless at dating? Well, excellent question. I don't think they actually want the answer to it. However, we know they try. They definitely try. So I immediately went to TikTok to see, well, what are they saying on TikTok? TikTok, right? Actually, I was surprised at what I found. Let me show you. Let me show you what I found. First, this is what I thought. I thought the TikTok was going to explode with videos like this. And we've seen this lady before, so if she looks familiar, that's why we haven't seen this video from her, but here she is saying what we all think they're going to say when they're answering the question, why are men hopeless at dating? Which is exactly the query that I typed in the search bar. So here's her
One of my
answer.
favorite arguments that some men have is, I'm a good man and no one appreciates me, so I'm just going to become a passport bro. Or I'm giving up on dating and I'm just going to pay a schmags worker instead and have zero aggravation. No, you're not. You're not a good man. You're a transactional man. You expect that if you're good or nice or jump through.
Just gonna stop her right there. Just for two reasons. One, to get a break, but also projection. She's about to say, oh, no, you're not. You're transactional. Transactional. You think if you're this, that, and the other, then you should get this, that, and the other. Hello? That's generally what we see from the other side. Just pointing that out. Like how the lack of self-awareness and the lack of awareness of our gender is astounding. Do you not realize, lady, how many women are everywhere on the internet and in real life saying, I'm this and I'm that, I'm educated and I'm this, how come I can't find a good man? How come I can't find a da-da-da-da-da? Relationships are transactional. It's whether or not they are, I suppose a word could be fair, or, that it's, of course there's a transaction happening, but both people are going into it with good faith. And this woman, and the seething hatred that is just emanating off of her sets me off.
Through all of these hoops, you will get something in return. And if you are that kind of a man, then you are. Just own it. But the mark of a true good man or woman, a good person, is, will you be kind? Will you be good to another when that person is not being good or kind to you? Tossing your hands in the air and having a tantrum saying you're going to take your toys and go to a different place.
I'm sorry not to be personal, lady, but your whole shtick is that you're this divorced woman, and you're talking about you're gonna get mad and take your toys and go home. Am I wrong? Isn't that what the divorce is really in most cases?
Playground does not make you a good playmate. It just makes you manipulative, and it exposes you as someone who only behaves well when it's for their own gain. One of my favorite arguments that some men have is, I'm a good man and no one appreciates
Autoplay,
me, so
I
I'm just going to
swear.
become a
TikTok,
passport bro.
They never shut up, but I think that's just, it's very realistic. So I said earlier when I first started the show that it surprised me. What I found surprised me. And here is a reason why. Here's a lady asking,
what are the three biggest struggles guys have when they're dating?
Number one, majority of the guys, they're upset because they feel overlooked. They feel rejected. They feel like women in dating isn't even really accessible to them at all.
Which
right?
is upsetting.
Right.
Like, I understand that.
And then they feel like women shit on men in general. And they're like, I'm not part of those guys because you're choosing. I think a lot of guys are like, you're choosing these guys that you're matching with on Instagram or dating apps that are like the top 10% of men in terms of looks. And then you're shitting on all men because these guys are, are being jerks, right?
yep, that is absolutely what we do. And we end up being alpha widowed, or this whole, I can't stand all men are this, all men are that, because you've dated a couple of them, and they generally, if you're going to find a guy that doesn't have the greatest character, etc., he's probably going to be in that, top 10%, because he can be, right? It's just like the most beautiful of the women. You're not always going to find the highest character there because it never had to develop. That's my theory. It never had to develop. So just realized some of you are going to freak out if you can't see the flower. Anyway, so let's get back to this article and see what they're saying about it. And we'll get back to another TikTok here in a minute that I think you guys are going to appreciate, because I see it as the tide is turning. I do. So let's read the propaganda, shall we? Why Are Young Men So Hopeless at Dating? By Ali Volpe, or Volpe, V-O-L-P-E. A Vox reader asks, why are young men struggling or failing to date/engage in romantic relationships more so than their female peers? Which right away you go, well, if they're the peers, then how come, if these people are having good luck and these people are their peers, how is that possible? Oh yeah, any of you guys watch 304 Math? Because these women are dating all these guys up here, and these guys are nobody's anywhere. Like, they're invisible. So, yeah, Home Math makes a great contribution. In a recent conversation, a new acquaintance of mine recounted an exchange he'd recently overheard. A man turned to his female friend and exclaimed, I'm not going to go to a bar and just start a conversation with a woman who wants to be picked up. One quip doesn't account for the entirety of men's experiences, of course, but it does speak to the challenges men seem to be facing recently in dating. Recently? All right, that's debatable. If dating is a numbers game, the numbers don't appear to be on the men's side. Just pay attention to how I think it's going to show, because we're reading this all together for the first time. My prediction is they're going to show how men are at fault and how women are just, women have no accountability in this. None of this is women's fault. Nothing they're doing, nothing they're not doing, nothing at all. This is 100% all because of whatever men are doing or not doing that they should be doing and they should not be doing. Obviously, that is not what I think. That is sarcasm. And it's easier to get the sarcasm past YouTube robot censor people. According to a 2022 Pew Research Center survey, 63% of men under 30 said they were single. 63%. 63%. That's more than half of men under 30 are single. This is a crisis. It's not just upsetting, as the lady in the last video said, although props to her. She was asking what the problem is and she was listening. So I'm all for that. I don't want to be too critical of these women that are really waking up and starting to see and being humble enough to listen and ask questions. So 63% under 30 are single compared to only 34% of women in the same age cohort. These single men are more likely to be looking for love too. Half of single men in Pew's survey reported looking for a committed relationship and or casual dates, while only 35% of single women said the same. How can that be? I thought men were just hound dogs and weren't interested in relationships and all the rest of it, which we totally debunked that a couple videos ago. I mean, we all know the truth, but, you know, study actually came out where they had to go, uh-oh, these stereotypes about men aren't true. This discrepancy could be for any number of reasons. I'm laughing because we all know the reason. And it's funny to watch them, mental gymnastics are making me dizzy, says Richard Reeves, the president of the American Institute for Boys and Men and the author of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. Which he's a men's rights activist. And again, we're all on the same side. However, we have different approaches and we have different ideas of what the reasons are. And the men's rights advocates are less likely to hold, generally speaking, women accountable. They'll be against feminism and stuff like that, but they kind of shy away from direct, like, hey, this is a problem, ladies, you know? And that's one of the things that frustrates me greatly about that movement. And it's funny because people think it's the opposite. Whatever. Okay, perhaps young men and women differ in their definition of a relationship. Or perhaps women are dating older men and other women at higher rates than previous generations. Or perhaps what is happening, and definitely is happening, is that all the women are dating the top tier men. So the top tier men have their little mini harems. We call those situationships, right? And these women don't necessarily know that they're not the only one, right? So they're all saying, oh, yeah, we're not single, right? But they're all sharing a dude. This is what's happening. People, are they this clueless? Like the person writing this article, is she that clueless? Or is this, or she knows and this is just, we're gonna cover it up. I'm not sure. I think it's a bit of willful ignorance. But Reeves posits that there's another reason that men, and in particular straight men, are struggling with dating, and it has to do with the way that the rules of romance have changed. A recent YouGov poll found that 57% of women said they've been on a terrible date. Only 44% of men can say the same. Yeah. We're so ungrateful, and our expectations are out of control. With many women no longer willing to accept ghosting, non-commitment, and harassment, men may be forced to change their ways or face being shut out of the dating pool. Okay, whatever. Okay. By and large, Reeves says the men he has spoken to understand this. They know what not to do. Don't mansplain, don't be toxic, don't be a predator, don't be a creep. But they're at a loss for what is acceptable when trying to date. Right, because don't this, don't that. It's all well and good. Don't mansplain. So what does that mean? You can't talk? You can't. How do you know what mansplaining is? How do you know what toxic is? These are things that are definitions that she gets to make up. And she gets to change them as her feelings change and based on how attractive you are, maybe how much money the man has. You know what I mean? So don't mansplain, don't be toxic, don't be a predator. Even that's a lot of the reason why a lot of men won't approach a woman, because, she can interpret that to mean many different things. Is that going to be harassment? Is she like, hey, I don't want to be approached while I'm just trying to have lunch with my friend? We know you can't even glance when you're at the gym just to like look for what machine you're going to do next. There might be a woman in your view. Oh my gosh, right? And then you glance a certain place and now it's harassment. So this is a great example. Reeves saying, don't mansplain, don't be toxic, don't be a predator, don't be a creep. Excuse me, can we define some terms? Obviously, don't be a creep, don't be a predator, of course, but like the definitions of those things have become absolutely impossible. So funny. They're going to be, don't be careful, guys. You're going to be shut out of the dating pool. Ooh. I feel like there's some chick on a bullhorn. She's like, if you guys don't straighten up, you're going to be shut out of the dating pool. And then she looks around and there's like, wait, where are they? Huh, they left. They left. You're screaming this to nobody. These men left the dating pool because this is impossible. It's impossible. And whatever they deem acceptable right now, 2 days from now, not going to be acceptable anymore. All of a sudden now you're creepy. Now you're this. Oh, that really made me mad. Okay. The newsletter is part of Vox's Explain It To Me. Each week, we tackle a question from our audience and deliver a digestible explainer from one of our journalists. Have a question you want us to answer? Ask us here. Okay. Quote, you can see a little bit of risk aversion among young men, Reeves says. You think? Partly because they are largely, and I think incorrectly, worried about the risks that are going to come from putting yourselves out there. Oh, incorrectly, huh, Reeves? Oh, you think it's incorrect? I think he needs to read some of the comments on my channel and see what these men have been through. You think it's incorrect that these men are a little, I almost said, pew shy? What? All social interaction carries some form of a risk, a potential for rejection, but the alternatives of dating available in the modern dating landscape make putting yourself out there even less appealing. No, it's not that. Well, that's one way to say it, but it's the power that women hold. It's the power they have to utterly destroy you. A false accusation is so much easier than people who have never faced it or experienced it or known somebody who has can even imagine. It's like you don't know until you know, and then it's too late. One factor to consider is the easy accessibility of corn. A 2020 study found that 91% of men between the ages of 18 and 73 consumed corn within the last month, compared to 60% of women. Okay, so are they trying to say, I think they have things backwards. Are they trying to say that the reason it's hard for men to date is because corn is so readily available? I'm sorry, but they would rather have a real woman who chose them and wants to have a life with them than they would online content. Okay, I'm going out on a limb. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. However, and this is where I think they have it backwards, because the situation is what it is, because men are by and large rejected constantly, because they face the dangers of false accusations and, they've been absolutely sidelined because they're not good enough. You know, they're only average or whatever. So therefore, it's not okay. Or they're 5'8", therefore whatever they do that might be the same as somebody who's 6'1". When you're 5'8", now it's creepy. So that might be why the men who are absolutely, you know, already shut out of the dating pool or have walked away from it because of the risks, yes, corn is going to be an outlet for them. Do I think it's good? No. I wish the temptation wasn't even there, but it is. And it preys upon men who are victims of this absolutely messed up, backwards dating and relationship environment we have today. So I think they have it backwards. When a hanky-panky experience mediated through a screen, no less, is a click away, why risk any potential discomfort? I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I think if corn wasn't there, they'd still say no. And a lot of men didn't even have the opportunity to say yes. Makes me mad, which tells me we need to see this other lady that I found that I was pleasantly surprised to see. I really thought it was going to be a complete landscape of that first lady we saw. I thought that was going to be everybody, but it wasn't. Check it out.
Okay, here's why dating is so much harder for a woman than a man.
Girl, it's not. Dating is much harder for men, and here are a few reasons why. 1, women want men to initiate. Automatically, this makes it more difficult for men. You're telling me that you just get to sit back and select from men, while men have to bravely spark a conversation out of midair, and somehow that's easier for him? Yeah, no. Number 2, female standards are sky high. Men don't require much to fall in love. If you take care of yourself and you're just pleasant to be around, they will crawl over broken glass for you. But guys have to make a certain amount of money, be a certain height, have immense charisma. You get the point. And number 3, our culture hates men. Masculinity is vilified in our society, and thus men are viewed with preconceived notions that women simply don't have to deal with. And that's something that has to change, which is why you should start supporting people that actually like men, like Jeremy's Razors. Jeremy's was built around the simple notion of upholding masculinity.
Yes, Jeremy's Razors. Anyway, I love her. Now, does anybody notice the difference in... There's a couple differences. Now, it's a very small sample size. However, I think there's something here. You guys tell me what you think. So we had the first lady who's like, men are bad, right? She's older, right? She's like, what, 50? You guys are good at just, estimating the age. It's like 50, right? At least. The other two that we have seen, the first one that was listening, asking questions, listening, right? Caring about men, not hating them. She was in her 20s, I'd say. This next woman, same. And I absolutely love everything she had to say. In her 20s also. The tide is shifting. The tide is turning a bit because women have been paying attention and they don't want to be hag maxing. They don't want to be seen as one of those gruff, masculine, man haters. They don't. And I'm not sure if it's who raised them. I'm not sure if it's what they've experienced. But I'll tell you, the Gen Z girls, the ones in their young 20s, late teens, sometimes even older 20s, they have their heads screwed on better than the others. I'm not saying, oh, green means go ahead. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the tide is shifting a little bit And women will self-correct when they realize men are walking off the plantation and they don't want to deal with any of that. Women will start to correct. A lot of people have said to me, what is the end goal? What is the end goal of this? If you're just telling men to not have relationships and everything, is that just the end goal and then we just die as a species? No, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying an effective thing to do is to go on strike or boycott. Remember Bud Light? Massive boycott. What did Bud Light do? Did we cease to have beer? No. Bud Light went and said, we're not doing that. Because they didn't want to not have beer anymore. I think that's the way women will go. I think as long as whatever you put up with, that's what you have to take. And when you stop putting up with it, at the end of the day, women will correct, because at the end of the day, regardless of what they tell you, they want to have a relationship, they want to have a family, they want to have children. There will always be some who crawled right out of our Grimm's fairy tales that are witches that won't want that, but that's okay. That's fine. They don't need to, right? But the women will correct. Anyway, so that's why MGTOW is a great thing. It protects men, and it causes a correction in the market. Ideological and political differences may also be driving singles apart. According to a recent American Perspective survey from the Survey Center on American Life, 52% of single women say they would be less likely to date a Trump supporter, compared to a 36% of single men who say they wouldn't date a Trump supporter. Yeah. Do those men date women? Anyway, 60% of single women feared that women would 60% of single women feared that women would be worse off under another Trump administration, whereas only 47% of single men felt the same. Given that young men appeared to favor Trump in the 2024 presidential election, this may impact their overall prospects. Yes, but look what it's doing to the young women, right? The young women who want to have a good man and a family and everything, they're like, I'm get on board. Gen Z is more conservative than young people of a generation usually are. So when they talk about these women voters, they won't date a Trump supporter, blah, blah, blah. I think they're talking about millennial women. Based on the studies I've seen and my own experiences and my own eyeballs. Now, you guys who live in cities are going to be like, no way, man. These women are all woke. They are in the city. They sure are. And just like that, I'm reminded that this is my living room, not a studio. Someone knocks on the door. Anyways, when politics looms too large in singles' lives and every choice, including who to date, carries significance, relationships can suffer, Reeves said. Yeah, but it's more than politics, isn't it? It's a worldview. It's a worldview. It's character. These are beliefs that matter. It's not like, did you vote for Bush or did you vote for Clinton back in the 90s? Because things weren't that far apart. It didn't mean as much. It does matter. And to pretend it doesn't, or to say that we're putting too much emphasis on it, I think is a giant mistake. I really do. But then again, I hate to say this, but it's very like Christian versus anti-Christian. It's a lot of what we're facing. And a lot of people feel like this is good versus evil, for what it's worth. So it's a lot more than who you voted for. And if you don't get that, then I think most people get that now. I really do. How do you build trust in modern dating? The problem then is how to encourage men to get out of their comfort zones, to feel comfortable with risk without feeling entitled to a woman's time. Women carry some responsibility, Reeves says, to offer kind rejections, and to not assume the worst of men. Oh, is that all that women need to do? Okay, sir. Okay. Men, of course, must also act in good faith and graciously accept a rejection. Dating has always required and will always require people to place some amount of trust in each other. Well, of course, but this man does not appear to get it. He does not appear to get it. Like, it's about way more than, oh, my feelings got hurt. It's way more than that. And it's also a huge part of it is that women do not know what a man's heart is and what a big deal it is to walk across the room and put yourself out there like that. Some people's standards and expectations really need an adjustment, and it isn't men. A total lack of trust and good faith has consequences. If your prevailing notion is that all men are dangerous misogynists or all women are boring and cruel, how can anyone reasonably date? There's a bit of a trend right now to start to think the worst of each other, Reeves says. Well, women have been doing that for a really long time. I remember that when I was in school. Women have been thinking that about men a very long time. It has only been very recently where men have said, wait a minute, this isn't okay. You shouldn't just treat us like this. So I push back on the idea that it's some kind of equal, oh, they think this group is bad and these people equally think this group is bad. I'm sorry, the timeline matters. The timeline matters here, Richard Reeves. And here he goes. And I see a lot of that on both sides. Of course, there will always be bad actors, Reeves says, but by and large, most people fall somewhere in the middle. Well, if that's true, how come there's such a problem with dating then? Really? Why don't people just say, maybe he doesn't know. But it's like, you can't know if you're so trained to never, ever criticize a woman. If criticizing a woman means that you're a hateful person and it's so terrible, you're not allowed to. But by contrast, we can criticize men all day long. We can make all kinds of sweeping statements, even ones that are physically harmful. We can say those statements like, I can't even say it on YouTube because it's, too violent. But like, you can say all men should, wander off of a cliff. You can say that. You cannot say that the other way around. And they'll be like, oh, well, one is obviously a joke. Is it? Is it? You couldn't say the other one as a joke. Not that I'm saying we should. I don't think you should say it either way. I don't think it should be illegal. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you guys know, like, it's totally one-sided. It's totally a different set of rules. The only real way forward, according to Reeves, is to assume that the vast majority of potential prospects aren't going to be creeps and aren't trying to harm one another. It's not that every woman will, it's that every woman can. And as the law goes, where is a man's power? Where is it? Where does a man have power? He doesn't. The whole enterprise needs a lot of grace, he says, and a lot of forgiveness and a lot of accepting people in good faith. Well, isn't that a sweet little summary that he's just said? And I'm like, that's not helpful at all, dude. That's not helpful at all. It's great to explain men and speak up about men and the men's rights movement and all that, and woohoo! But if you're not going to say what a huge part of the problem is, you're not going to get anywhere. And I get that you really can't, because they'll censor you and they're not going to ask you for your advice in Vox, are they? They're not going to want to talk to you if you're going to say the truth. But like, you have to say the truth. And I wonder if these men are that clueless, these MRA guys are that clueless as to what the real problem is and what some of the solutions would have to be. Or are they just like, well, we don't want to say that now. We want to be nice. And it's like, how? Okay. In that way, how does he not sound like a total simp? Am I too far down the rabbit hole that all I see is he's just kind of simping out here? Because that was just so disappointing as far as like getting the real story on what is going on. And I think it really does a mass disservice to men, because you're saying that the whole reason that men are lonely or not dating, etc., is because they're afraid they're going to be shot down and that the lady is going to be nasty about it. He's saying the whole reason that, oh, she might think I'm creepy. Really? Maybe that was the case in the 90s. Like, that's your biggest risk. Not to say that it's not hurtful to the man for all that, but it is so much bigger than that. Because there's a lot of men thinking, well, okay, but even if I get the date, like, for what? How many other guys is she dating? Right? What is she going to expect on the first date? How much money do I have to spend? How many hoops do I have to jump through? It's about way more than, oh, I might get shot down. And by the way, you probably will. And not because you're lacking in any way, but because she lacks the ability to see true value. And she has an overinflated sense of herself and what she, quote, deserves. And I think that's a great place to end this one. Breathe. Breathe. We must protect our peace. Even with all this nonsense going on, we must protect our peace and feed your souls. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.